Welcome to part 5 of Computer Programming 1. In this session, we're going to look at the programming assignment, and then I'm going to do a very similar assignment. Because this is an introductory class, this assignment says what to do step by step in the first part. In the second part, we take the training wheels off, but you can pretty much follow the same example as we have in the first part. First of all, the due dates. They're coming up quickly because of our shortened schedule. So the soft deadline is Friday, June 22nd at 6 o'clock p.m. That means write that down in your calendar. Then remember there's a 2-day grace period, and then the hard deadline is when I start taking off late points. So best bet is to try to get this done by Friday, but there's not actually a late penalty until Sunday. So if you need any assistance, most certainly feel free to contact me. Okay. We're going to do two separate programs. The first one, we want to create a Java main class called Calculator Runner, find the public static void main method, and insert a line to print the phrase in calculator main to standard output, add a method name prompt user. Okay, we're going to need to know how to do each one of these things. And in the lines below on step 2, 3, 4, and 5 and 6, it'll tell you what to do, but I'll go ahead and show you now as well. Also, as part of this, we'll want to create a Java class named LoanCalculator with one method called calculate and 3 instance fields or attributes plus getters and setters. Okay, no problem. So to start with, the classes you are to make here are called Calculator Runner and LoanCalculator. I'm going to make similar classes, except mine is going to be named Driver and Car. Actually, Driver and Vehicle. Let's do Driver and Vehicle. And it's going to be in a package named Vehicles. So I'm going to open up NetBeans and choose File, New Project, Java, Java Application. You'll want to do this exact same step. Then I'm going to choose Next. For the project name, well, by default, the package is going to be the same as the project name. On your assignment, I believe I said make it a package called Calculator. For mine, I'm going to make it a package called Vehicles, so I'm going to name it Vehicles. Notice that I type in a capital V on Vehicles up here for the project name. Down here, it creates what we call a package. And notice that it lowercases that. That's because in Java, we typically leave packages lowercase. Now, what is a package? A package is a collection of classes. And classes are the things in our program that do work. A package is analogous to a directory on a file system because creating a package actually does create that directory on the file system. It's a way to organize our classes. We can have large programs that have tens of thousands of classes. The point of sale project that I work on, I've never counted, but I wouldn't doubt if it's tens of thousands, maybe even up to 100,000 or so different classes. So we have to organize them. We have to organize them so that we know where to find them and where to identify them. And that is what a package is. By default, NetBeans will name our package after the project. So if the programming assignment says make a package called Calculator, the easiest way to do that is to start a new project and give the project name Calculator, which by default will make the package Calculator as well. Check the project location. Make sure that's what you want. For me, yeah, that's fine for me. Project folder. Again, the project folder is what you're actually going to zip up and send to me when you're finished with this assignment. Okay? Now, the class. I said for your assignment, I said make a class called Calculator Runner. Mine is going to be named Driver. What I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the word main on this line where we have create main class. It's very important though. I'm going to leave the vehicles and the period. Make sure you leave the period. Vehicles, period. And then I'm going to say driver with the capital D. Remember our naming conventions. Classes are named with Pascal case, so no spaces between words, and all words start with the capital letter. All other letters are lowercase. So Calculator Runner is going to have a capital C and a capital R. Okay, this looks good. I'm satisfied with this because I have my package name, a period, and the word driver. That looks great. So I'll choose Finish. Okay, our assignment said create a Java main class calculator runner. Okay, we just did that. I called mine driver. Insert a line to print in calculator main to standard output and add a method named prompt user. Okay, so we go back. And to print a line to standard output, we have to use system.out.println. We can type that out, or we can use a NetBeans shortcut. If I type SOUT and hit tab, it will automatically give me the system.out.println, and then I can just say in driver main. It's very important that we pay attention to syntax though. If you do the SOUT, it will automatically do this for you. System with a capital S, then a period, then out all lowercase, and then println all lowercase. It's very, very important that you see that syntax. Okay? The entire line. If you have one syntax error on this line, your entire program will not compile. So be very careful. System.out.println, and then an open curly, and then in quotes whatever string you want to print out, surrounded with double quotes. Again, that's very important. If you don't surround it with double quotes, it will definitely not work. Every time I teach this class, probably 3 people do that. So be very careful. Make sure you're not one of those 3. Make sure that the entire string is in quotes. And then terminate with a close paren and a semicolon. Make sure your line looks exactly like this. Okay? So this is what we call the main method. The main method has this very special syntax with the word public, static, void, and then main, and then open paren, and then string, open close square bracket, args, and then close paren, open curly, and a matching close curly on line 20. If you let NetBeans create your first project and you tell it to create a main class, it will do all of this for you. Just in case something went wrong and you deleted it by mistake though, you can create a main method very easily in NetBeans. Just type in psvm, hit tab, and it will give you that same syntax. Now, one warning though, you cannot have 2 methods with the same signature in a class. Can't do that. So I can only have one method, public, static, void, and then the word main, and then string, square brackets, args. So what's a class? A class is this entire thing, public class driver, and all of the methods within it. We usually think of a class as a noun. Usually we'll think of nouns like calculator for your example. Car is a common example, frequently used. A person, student, employee. Each of these things are nouns. Methods are work that will be done within the class, so we tend to name them as verbs. Okay, we'll have a method in a moment we'll call prompt user. The other thing we have is what we call attributes. Attributes are variables that describe our classes. If you remember the binary math example I did in an earlier lecture, we were talking about what data types are, how we can store a number directly on the hard disk. Or we can map numbers to letters, and that way we can store letters on the hard disk by converting them to numbers and then converting them to zeros and ones. Or we can take a color, break it down into red, green, and blue shades, map those shades to numbers, those numbers to zeros and ones, and then save them onto the hard drive. These are things that we call data types. Data types are basically saying what type of data or what kind of data we wish to deal with. Okay, so that's a data type. And we'll see more of this as we continue to go with the program. But a variable is something with a data type that describes our class, which is a noun. Methods are verbs. Okay, I'm going to make another method. Now, it's very important with methods where they go. They must go within the boundaries of the class. That's the area I've shaded in blue. A class begins with an open curly. A class ends with a corresponding closed curly. All methods must go here. Number 2, methods cannot go inside of other methods. They have to be siblings. They cannot be nested. So the only place a method can go is within the class, but not within another method. So if we go back to our assignment, add a method named prompt user. Okay, pay very, very careful attention to where my cursor is. I'm within the class, I'm not within another method. So I'm going to say public static void prompt user. Open and close parentheses, open curly, and then close curly. If I type in open curly and hit enter, NetBeans will automatically add the close curly for me. What does public static void mean? Don't worry too much about that yet, because remember I said that there's no starting point to learning Java. You have to start, and it's like being on a carousel. When you get on a carousel, there's always somebody behind you and someone in front of you. Public static void prompt user, those are some of the things that are behind us on the carousel. I will say what public means is that this method can be called from the outside. You can be in a different class and call this method. Prompt user is the name of our method. We can decide that name, and then it's followed by open and close parentheses. And then we have an open and close curly that defines the boundaries of this method. So I'm going to go ahead and save. I don't have any red lines, so everything is fine now. If I wish, I can do a system out print line and say in prompt user. Okay, and then I can save. And then I can right click and choose run file. One thing that's very interesting, notice my output, in driver main. That's all we got, in driver main. We did not get in prompt user. Many times people think that methods just execute in order, but that's not the case at all. The main method is a special method because it will get called when the program starts. But prompt user will only run if it is called. Prompt user will only execute if it is called. Right now, nothing's calling prompt user. So what I need to do is I need to put in a method call. Call the method prompt user. This is one of the most confusing parts of the first part of this class. So I cannot stress enough, what I'm highlighting here is a method. What I'm highlighting here is a method. There is a distinct difference between a method and a method call. A method call, there's a reason why the name is call. Because you're calling a method. So if I have prompt user, like so, and I have prompt user spelled the same way, camel case typically for method names, open and close paren, terminate with a semicolon. I am calling the method prompt user. Okay, what I have highlighted now is a method call. It is calling the method prompt user. It is not the method prompt user. It is a call to the method prompt user. It's telling prompt user to run. Now, what I have highlighted now, this is the method prompt user. So, the method prompt user has a signature. Public static void prompt user, open and close paren, open curly, close curly. That means it is a method. This is a call to a method. Now, my phone number is 513-886-7882. That belongs to my phone. Okay? If you call me, you're going to put into your phone the number 513-886-7882. Now, does that mean you have my phone? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. That means you're calling my phone. Just because you've put 513-886-7882 into your phone and hit dial, that doesn't make your phone my phone. And that's the same thing here. This is my phone. This is you calling my phone. Just because we have the word prompt user here doesn't mean that's the method prompt user. It means we're calling the method prompt user. This, on the other hand, is the method prompt user. So I'm going to save, and I'm going to run again. And let's see what we get this time. Now we see in driver main, in prompt user. We see this time we got both outputs. As a matter of fact, if I wish, I can call prompt user 3 times. Just like if you were to call me 3 times. Say you dialed my number 3 times, you would call me 3 times, and I would receive your call 3 times. Now I right click and choose run, and no surprise, in driver main, and then in prompt user, we get 3 times. That's a bit redundant, so I'll go ahead and take it back to just 1 time. But you see here the difference between a method and a method call. Again, be very careful. Make sure your open and closed curlies match. Extremely careful of that. Make sure your open and closed parentheses match. If they don't, you'll get a red line. And remember, what do you do when you get a red line? Stop everything and fix it. Very important. Stop everything and fix it. Okay? Don't delete a closed curly unless it shouldn't be there. Make sure that your curlies are staying in balance. So there we go. That's our first class. Now this is what we'll call a user interface class. When we're writing programs, it's a good idea to keep any interaction with the user separate from the rest of the logic of the program. The reason being, we'll find many times that user interfaces can change over time. If you go back to the 70s, we had mainframes, and a lot of logic was on mainframes. Mainframe was really a different world. Things tended to run in batch. So I remember when I worked at Procter & Gamble in the 90s, they would have to take several days and even weeks to figure out how much money they made. That's very strange by today's standards, because now you can look and you can figure out, how many products you've sold and what your profit margin is nearly real time. We see that a lot in point of sale as well, where you can see how many items you've sold, what your inventory is in the store, what the expected inventory should be, so on and so forth. But back then, in mainframe world, typically a program would read a file, do some processing, and then output another file. And these would kind of work in a chain, but typically they would work overnight. So these mainframe jobs would just be chained up in a series. One would run and then finish, and then the next day another would run and finish. So to reconcile, to get all these numbers, typically would take several days. So we started with that, and then all of a sudden the PC came out in the late 70s and early 80s. And at first it was kind of a toy, but then all of a sudden there was a realization that there's a lot of processing power in this PC that can be used. So the late 80s all through the 90s, client server became really big, where you'd have some kind of Windows-like interface to work with programs. Once again, similar business logic, but different user interface. Then in the late 90s, the internet happened. Prior to the internet, many software packages you had to install on your computer, and it could be a real pain to do so. Nowadays we do things like online banking, and we just take that for granted. Mortgage calculators and things like that. We just take these things for granted. But back in the 90s, we typically had to install everything. I worked in banking for a little bit, and we had a loan application for dealers that would finance their inventory sitting on the lot. This is something that was ideal to put on the internet, but instead they had me write a desktop program. And I can tell you there's nothing worse than trying to support a program installed on a PC in Toledo when you're in Cincinnati. It was a real pain. It could be a real pain. So the internet happened, and suddenly everything moved to the internet. Once again, similar business logic, but different location. And by the way, each time something like this has happened, we always think it's the last, and it's not. So the internet happened, and then all of a sudden the mobile phone revolution happened. Now everything wants to be an application on the mobile phone. You can probably think of several examples of this, where you might have the same application with different user interfaces. This is very common. When I make a flight, many times I'll go to Delta's website and make my flight there, pick my seat there. But then on the same note, I also have the Fly Delta app on my phone, and I can just look it up there. On the same note, when I go to check in, they have some interface into their system. The best way to design this is to have logic in one place and user interfaces in different places. User interfaces that can be detached, so user interfaces that are separate. Driver is our user interface class here. Another example I can give that's, the one I can speak to personally is point of sale. Years ago, even through today, if you want to buy something, you would go to a checkout and somebody would ring you up. Then self-checkout happened, and personally I've always liked self-checkout because I'm just not very patient, and I don't like waiting on people, and I know how to check out my own groceries in a quick manner, so I prefer that route. So what's self-checkout? It's very similar to what the cashiers use, but a different user interface. Well, now we're seeing a big move into mobile point of sale, like the example I gave in an earlier recorded session about when I got my phone holster, and the person at the Verizon store just added it to my phone bill and emailed me the receipt. So each of these are just a different way of looking at the same business logic. So driver is our user interface class. I'll put that in the comments here. A class that will interact with the user. Now, we'll typically also have a noun class or several noun classes. And in your programming assignment, you're supposed to create a Java class called loan calculator, and this is a noun, okay? This has to have a method calculate and three fields, balance, rate, and periods. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a class called vehicle. And I'm going to make that, let me consolidate. My projects probably looks different from yours because I have several other projects open. But in any case, I'm going to right click on the package vehicles. And this is very important. See the gold box and the word vehicles. That's what I'm going to click on. The package vehicles. I'm going to right click on this, choose new in Java class. Again, pay very close attention to where I am. The project vehicles, source packages, and then the package named vehicles. Okay, I'm going to go down and select Java class, and I'm going to call this vehicle. Okay, just like so. And now I'm going to choose finish. Now, in this class vehicle, within the boundary of the class, the open curly, close curly, I need to define some attributes. Again, vehicle is a noun. Attributes will describe vehicles. Think about your car in the parking lot. How do you know which car is yours? You know which car is yours based on its attributes. What are the attributes of your car? Make, model, year, license plate. How do you know which car is yours when you're in the parking lot? You look for these attributes. Specifically, you're looking for specific values of the attributes. So attributes are variables. Variables are locations in memory. These attributes describe a vehicle, which is a noun, a class, which is a noun. So variable. Variable is a place in memory. Okay? We need two things to declare a variable. We need a name, which is unique. It's the only way we can identify that variable, with its unique name. We also need a data type. And for our purposes, we're going to use two. We're going to use one called double and one called string. Remember that we did an example a few lectures ago where we looked at binary math. And I said you can store numbers as zeros and ones. But then you can store letters by associating the letter with a number and then store that number as a 0 or a 1. Or you can store a color if you convert that color to red, green, blue, and then convert the red, green, blue shades into numbers, and then convert those numbers to zeros and ones. So the data type tells us, are zeros and ones, are they going to be numbers? Are they going to be strings? Are they going to be colors or something else? And again, the two we're going to look at right now are double and string. There are several more, but remember we're on our first ride around the carousel, and we'll discover more variables as we continue to go around the carousel. Okay, so vehicle. For my purposes, I'm going to think of a vehicle having a, let's say, odometer reading. Actually, you know what? Let me introduce one other variable type called int. An int is for whole numbers, and a double is for numbers that can have a decimal. So string, int, and double. Those are the three data types we'll know. Here's how I declare a variable, and I'll put a comment to this effect. Declare attributes. An attribute's just a special kind of variable. To declare a variable, I have to have a name, and it must be unique. And I have to have a data type, for our purposes, string, int, or double. And then I terminate the declaration with a semicolon. The variable name is typically camel case. And remember what camel case is. Camel case means, there we go. Camel case means words, but take the spaces out between the words. The first word is entirely lowercase. Every word after that, uppercase the first letter only. Capitalize the first letter only. Okay? So variable names are typically camel case. Beyond that, they have the same rules as class names. That is, they can have any letter, they can contain a number in the name as long as the number isn't the first character. And for our purposes, let's say no special characters. You actually can use the underscore, but let's avoid that and just say no special characters. So I've declared a variable or a place in memory of type odometer. An int data type actually has 4 bytes, so I have just reserved 4 bytes of the computer's memory for this attribute named odometer. On a new line then, I can declare int miles per gallon. Okay, terminate with a semicolon. Now I've reserved another 4 bytes for the miles per gallon of this car. And finally, we'll say double gallons of gas. A double is actually 8 bytes, but it can contain fraction data, so a decimal after the 0 and numbers after that. So right now I've just reserved 16 total bytes of memory for this class called vehicles. Okay? This is declaring an attribute. They all describe a vehicle, what its odometer reading is, what its miles per gallon is, and how many gallons of gas it contains. And notice that these are all camel case. Lowercase first word, capitalize the letter on every word thereafter, and remove spaces. Okay, so add 3 instance fields, balance, rate, and periods. I'm going to change this a little bit because some people misunderstood that last time I offered this. I'm going to make it look like that. There we go. That looks better. Okay, add 3 instance fields. That's what I've just done. Okay, add getter and setter methods for each of these attributes. Okay, when we have a variable, we want to make it available to the outside world. So what we'll do is we'll make a special method. This is called a getter and a setter. First, public get odometer. This is the naming convention that we usually use. Return odometer. A method can be called, a public method can be called from another class. This method getOdometer, because it's public, can be called from another class. And what's going to happen is if another class calls getOdometer, it will receive the value that's in this odometer variable. Okay? So method can be called from another class. And this, if it's public. In this case, we're going to return the value of the odometer variable. A method could also want to change that variable. So we're going to say public void set odometer int odometer. Let's say int in odometer. Okay, open curly and close curly. And this time I'll say odometer equals in odometer. So what I'm doing here is I am accepting a variable coming in, assigning the value of that variable to the attribute odometer. Okay? That might be a little bit confusing because we don't really know what methods are yet. So let me show you a shortcut. And honestly, if you don't use this shortcut, you're wasting a lot of time. Okay, I wanted to type it out to show you how to type it out, but let me now show you the shortcut. I'm going to right click on this class, choose refactor, and encapsulate fields. Right click, refactor, and encapsulate fields. I'm going to check each checkbox, and then I'm going to say refactor. What this does, it automatically generates all of those getters and setters for me. So back to the instructions. Oh, did I actually? 1 second. Okay, add getter and setter methods for each of these attributes. You can just do exactly what I just did. Right click, refactor, encapsulate fields, click all the boxes, and then choose refactor. And that's done. So that you actually get for free. Finally, there's a requirement. Add a method, public void calculate. Now the getter and setter methods we just created are getter and setter methods because that's what their names start with. Get odometer, set odometer, get miles per gallon, set miles per gallon. We can also call them accessor methods because a getter method is making an attribute accessible. The setters we can call mutator methods because they're allowing us to change the value of an attribute, like its odometer, miles per gallon, or gallons of gas. The other kind of method is what we'll call a work method. And a work method is a method that simply does work, but it's not a getter or a setter. I'm going to describe a work method now called public void go int distance. Okay, and we're not going to worry about the implementation of this yet. We're not going to worry about actually putting anything in here. I'm just going to make the method. Above it, I'm going to make a javadoc comment. A javadoc comment will describe a method. The syntax for that is slash asterisk asterisk and then hit enter, and it will automatically finish off this comment block for you with an asterisk and a slash. So what I'm going to say is move this car the specified distance. Okay, then at param distance, notice that I'm going to be passing in a value here. We don't know what that means yet. I don't expect you to know what that means yet, so don't worry about that. But I will say the distance we wish to travel. At this point, that's really all you need for your programming assignment. You need a UI class called, well, in your case, calculator runner, and then you need a what we'll call a Java Bean class, which in your case is going to be loan calculator. It should have a few attributes, which we saw how to declare those. It should have getters and setters, and then one work method, which in this case we've called go. Okay? Now, that's half of the assignment. The other half of the assignment, you need to make a class called converter runner, which is going to be the user interface, and then another class called converter. I have not said what to do step by step here, but it's almost identical to loan calculator and calculator runner. It's just doing it all over again, except in this case, instead of calculating a loan, we'll be converting temperature from Celsius to Fahrenheit. By the way, Mexico is on Celsius, and so I have to do that conversion in my head a lot. When somebody says it's going to get up to 40 degrees, I think, oh yeah, that's pretty hot, isn't it? So in any case, that should be enough to get you started on the program. On our next lecture, we'll talk a little bit about what getter and setter methods are, and we'll talk about the categories of variables. We explained one today, and that is an attribute, which is green. We used one but didn't talk much about it, and that's what we call a parameter variable, or a variable that will accept a value when a method is called. We'll talk about that one next time. In any case, we're at the 33-minute mark, so I'm going to go ahead and stop this, and then we'll start on the next recording. Thank you.